Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Really appreciate you guys taking some time to watch the video. And before we get started on today's video, just like to invite everybody to subscribe to the channel if you haven't had a chance to do so, because still over 50% of the people that are watching these videos are not subscribed to the channel. And you know, there's a thing called giving and the law of giving and receiving in the universe. And if you get information like I'm giving you here with the tips, one of the best ways to stay within that universal law is to give something back, and the best way you can do that is to hit that subscribe button. So much appreciated there. Today, guys, I'm going to have a video answering a subscriber request. I had a request from a subscriber a couple days ago about how to catch cruising visible bass in the springtime. And we see this a lot in the month of May. Probably you see the cruising bass more in late April and May than any other times of the year. And a lot of these bass, they're in all different phases of the spawn. They can be, you know, some late pre-spawners. They can be fish spawning. They can be post-spawners that are, you know, garden fry or looking for shad or whatever. But you see a lot of shallow bass cruising in the springtime of the year. And a lot of these bass can be very uncatchable. They spook away. It's hard to get them to bite. I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to, you know, catch those fish that you can see cruising. So the first thing, guys, that you need to do is you've got to be able to see them. So I don't want to make this sound like a obvious plug, but it's a true statement. You've got to get a good pair of polarized glasses. These are the Randy Blaukat 2 models. You can get them at Solar Bat. I'll include the link in the description here. And what you want to look for is, I like the high contrast yellow lens. This really allows you to see those bass good swimming down the bank. So the first thing you got to do is you got to see them before you can catch them. So it's really critical that you have a good pair of sunglasses that allows you to see in the water there. So that's the first thing. Second with that is you have got to be stealthy on these fish, because a lot of times, depending upon the wind, you can see these fish from a long way away. The wind and the water clarity, you can see them from a long way away, or sometimes you may get on top of them. But the key to catching these fish is you have to make long casts and not get up on them. What you have with cruising visible fish is they are very, very personality sensitive. And what I'm talking about, some of them are, as soon as you cast out there and hit the water, you'll see them dart off as fast as they can. Some of them just slowly swim away, and some of them will come right to the bait and look at it. There are a lot of different personalities based upon a lot of different aspects. But the big key that you have to remember on this is you got to keep your distance. And so, for example, I'll give you a couple different scenarios which you can do here, and then I'm going to show you the key baits to use. If you see a bass cruising, what you need to do is don't try to throw to that bass right off the bat. If you see a bass cruising, like say you come up on top of it too quick, or you can see one cruising down the bank, take your boat, turn it around, and get a long way away from the fish. That's the first thing that you have to do. You have to get that boat away from the fish. And then you want to come back down and begin making long casts into the area where you saw that fish. That is probably one of the biggest keys that you can do. Get your boat away from them so they're not quite as spooky. I think a lot of people, they try to catch them when they're up close too much, because a true cruising bass is not a spawning bass. It's something that like I said, their personalities are all over the place. So remember that when you see it, turn your boat around, get a long way away. The next thing is the lures. The bait is really critical on this, and by far there is one lure heads and above everything that is going to catch these fish, and that's a wacky rigged soft stick bait in a shad pattern. All that is together is true. You've got to have some type of a shad pattern or a two-toned pattern soft stick bait. So I got two different ones. The first one I like to do is I like some type of a laminate, like some type of a white pearly type laminate, something that's fairly bright. I wacky rig it with a straight shank Gamakatsu G Finesse 2-aught straight shank hook. I'm throwing it on a spinning rod, usually with 8-pound test line, sometimes 6, because you want to get that distance. And I'm throwing this thing out there, and as soon as it hits the water, what you want to do is you want to jerk it real fast, about 4 or 5 feet across the surface of the water. Now what this does, it does two different things. If the fish is a long way away from the bait, it will immediately get their attention and get it over there to them. And if you cast up close to the fish, by jerking it real fast across the surface like that, sometimes you can trigger a reaction strike. Do it for, like I said, 2 to 4 feet, something like that. Then after that, let the bait sink down probably, 12 inches, maybe 2 feet, and keep an eye out for that fish coming over to it to look at it. If you see that fish coming over to it, pop your worm where it jerks up like that and let it fall back down. A lot of times that'll trigger the strike. And the third way to do it is simply cast out there where you think the fish is and simply let it go to the bottom. Once it hits the bottom, pump it up hard off the bottom and then reel it straight to the surface and start jerking it across the surface. Sometimes if they're down low, they'll follow that up and they'll hit it up high like that. But the bait is real critical, either a shad pattern or a two-toned. Like this is that two-toned Zoom Slinky. It's a sort of a watermelon chartreuse on both sides. There's something about a two-toned soft plastic stick bait that will generate the strike from a cruising bass better than like a straight watermelon or straight green pumpkin, something like that. So that's basically the main techniques that I use with it, guys, is just be quiet, be stealthy, keep an eye out for the thing, use the wacky rig and the shad patterns, make long casts, and that is the best way to catch them. One of the things that you're going to find out, though, about the cruising fish is sometimes they're just not going to bite. Sometimes these cruising fish, they have been spawning. They may be just, really, really spooky. They may have no interest whatsoever in feeding. They may have no interest in protecting fry or eggs or anything like that. And sometimes they're just next to impossible to catch. But if you see a good one, if you see like a 3 or 4 or 5 pounder swimming around, and say you're going to be there for multiple days, those fish are territorial. They're not like moving through an area. A lot of times when you see a cruising fish, they're in a territory of maybe 20 or 30 feet going back and forth. So try fishing for that fish at different times of the day. If you see one late in the afternoon, maybe come back the next morning, try to get it under low light conditions. Come back, if it's calm and you've seen it under calm conditions, come back if you've got a little breeze. So, just keep coming back at different times. And one other thing I'll give you besides the soft plastic stick bait, one other thing that works real good. Sometimes if you see a cruising bass, you can come back through the area with a crankbait and you can burn that crankbait like some type of a small shad pattern. I use like a shad wrap was one of my favorite. You can make a long cast with a shad pattern crankbait and burn it through that area where you saw that fish cruising, and sometimes for whatever reason the fish will trigger and hit that crankbait. So that's just a few things that I've learned from fishing for visible cruising fish. I think it might help you out, but it's a fun way to catch them, man. It's a fun way to see them hit the bait when they're on it, but it can be frustrating at the same time. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys, much appreciated, and we'll talk later.